Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video of a game that I played recently in a tournament where, well, two games really. First of all, I've got a game versus an 1850, kind of an appetizer game, and then the main course of this game versus a 1650, which I think is a pretty good game. So stick around for that. Yeah, we're just gonna get into it. The time control here is the normal classical, which is 90-minute with a 30-second increment for both players. And the ratings that you see on the screen are our national national USCF ratings. So yeah. Either way, we're going to get into it. I start off the first game with the move d4, and my opponent goes knight f6. Very reasonable move. The second most common move against d4, or is the first one. It's basically intermittent between d5 and the move knight f6, which he plays, and I already take my opponent out of his theory with the move bishop g5. And the reason why I know he's out of theory is because my opponent spent a good deal of time. I believe he spent around like 45 seconds on his next move, which it really isn't that much for an hour-long game. Well, for a 90-minute game, but it's saying something. And he decides to play the move e6. Very reasonable move. And what I like to do here, I have a couple of lines. Of course, you can go knight d2, you can go e3, you can go knight gf3, you can probably go c4 in some lines. Probably this is okay, but I don't really like c4. It's not the greatest thing with this opening. And the last but not least, the move that I enjoy playing is this move e4, which is very, very aggressive, simply taking control of the entire center. And if your opponent doesn't know how to play, white actually just gets a very, very large advantage, which I really, really like about this. It's only equal. The only reason this position is equal is because of the move h6. Everything else is wrong. Everything else is wrong. The more common move is this move bishop e7, which my opponent plays. First of all, h6 is intending to go here, and it looks like white has a very good position, but computers will always say 0, 0, 0. And you know what? Looking like I have a really good position is halfway to having a really good position, so you know what? I like that. Anyway, my opponent goes bishop e7. The line here is this move e5. And after a couple of things, my opponent can go for knight e4, knight g8, or knight e4. H6 here doesn't work simply because I take. I'm attacking the bishop, and after here I take, and I'm up a piece. My opponent goes knight d5, most common move. What you're supposed to do here is trade. I'm still in my theory. Queen takes is the most common move, and you are able to play this move c4. On the surface, it may not look like it because it looks like you have this check, and it looks like white is in some trouble. But the simple move knight d2 is able to come here. The reason why it looks kind of scary is because this move knight c3 gets met with either knight takes c3 or queen takes b2, which are both kind of scary moves. The computer says it's a blunder, but we have the move knight d2 here. My opponent realizes that and plays subsequently the move knight b6. Of course, really reasonable. I continue my development, all normal stuff. Knight c3, castles, knight f3, and my opponent decides to strike back in the center with this move c5. And as you can see by the advantage on the last move, it's probably plus 0.5, plus 0.6. Yeah, I have a very, very comfortable position. I have the entire center, and I have some nice attacking ideas on his king. But after the move c5, white is completely winning. White is completely winning. And it is not the move that you would expect. It really is not the move that you would expect. And so much, in fact, not the move that you would expect that I absolutely played the wrong move. The move here, which is very, very tricky to find, is this move dc5. And the reason why it's tricky to find is because it's just not a move that you want to play. Like, you're splitting your pawns. Now, this pawn can become a weakness very quickly. You might have played f4, weaken your king a little bit. It just seems like a bad pawn. And after like queen takes c5, of course, it's a little bit strange to find the correct winning option. Like, your pawn is being attacked, your pawn is being targeted. There's some weird stuff here. Like, the move that I was thinking of when I first looked at the position was knight e4, of course with the engine, but this doesn't really work due to some checks like knight queen b4 or something. I probably have to go back. Actually, queen d2 is forced, right? Because if the knight comes back, then you lose b2, So I guess queen d2 is forced, and then at the end of the day, I guess this position is fine. Oh, king d2. Okay. Yeah, the real move here is, the idea is to play queen d6, trade off the queens, and say, okay, now you're never getting your Leinster bishop out. That's the point. Very nice point. Also, you're threatening to trap the knight, which is a little bit interesting. Kind of like if they were playing anything, this move happens. I'm wrong. Long castles is better. Shows what I know about chess. Either way, that doesn't happen, and I thought that the only logical move here, I spent some time because this wasn't in my prep, I thought the only logical move here is to play the move d5. If d5 doesn't work, then I'm insane, so I play d5. But this is the wrong move, and actually it gives black equality. Really, really irritating. Really, really, really irritating. Of course, my opponent had an idea. Actually, a lot of moves win here for white, like you can go knight e4, bishop e2, probably rook c1 is fine. It's fine. Like there's a lot of decent moves, but the most natural d5 is a mistake, which is very, very irritating. And after the move ed, of course, very logical. I thought for a while here, and there's a lot of things to think about. I thought for a couple of things, I thought I was maybe gonna play this move knight b4, simply threatening to trap the rook in the corner. Maybe I want to put my knight on d6, which is anchored in by the pawn. But I ended up not going for that. I ended up not going for this move, just knight b5, sorry. Simply because I thought that, like, he can even sack the rook here, for example. But I was just saying, like, I thought this move d6 was very powerful. Right, and after, like, knight takes d6, maybe his bishop gets active to g4. And actually, I thought black was actually doing really, really well here, and I'm glad to see that I was right. Like there's some like serious like threats here. For example, if I'm to do anything like play this move a3, we have bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and like a very simple queen e5, picking up the knight. Because of course this, and yeah, there's some really interesting issues there. Another thing I thought about is obviously I thought about cd. But I didn't like this also because of d6, and I'm like, his bishop is getting out, he's getting like play here. Thought it was worse. My original intention was to go knight b5, but I was like, why am I losing the pawn for no reason? I thought knight b5 maybe takes in here, and I'm like, but also he doesn't have to take. I thought this move rook d8 made a lot of sense, which is okay. No. Wait, why is this bad? Why is this bad? Okay, I actually don't know. And this is bishop b2. It wants like a simple move like knight 8 d7. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the move also makes a lot of sense, simply putting pressure on the pawn. Okay, yeah. Either way, I ended up thinking for a while, and I found the best line, which was this idea of knight d5, and after knight d5, you don't take back with the pawn, and you actually play the move queen d5. If you take back with the pawn, you lose, due to like d6 ideas again, and like f6, and your pawn is going to be lost in the center. And queen d5, and I'm doing okay. My opponent plays rook d8, which is an interesting line, trying to play d6, of course. Pressure down my king, he was uncastled, and I thought for a little bit, and I played the best move again. I played bishop d3, simply developing a bishop, targeting the king. And what I was obviously worried about is the move d6, simply because after d6, there's some very interesting lines here, and I thought that like he's threatening takes, for example, with this. I was also thinking maybe the best move is knight c6, threatening this, and I don't really know where my pieces were going. I thought maybe queen e4, threatening a checkmate, but after g6, actually the position is pretty equal. Something like this is actually wrong, so I have to play very instantly. Maybe short castles. Short castles loses, long castles is the only move. It gets very tense, but anyway, my opponent makes a big mistake here. He plays d6, which is a big issue. Simply saying, okay, I'm going to try and win your pawn, but this doesn't really work out due to one move and one move alone, a move that I missed, actually. It doesn't work out due to long castles. Simply saying, after this move happens, I have, actually, I can even sack the queen first and then play bishop h7, pick up the queen, and decimate his position with all of his pieces being, what's the word, undeveloped, and me being able to get my rook out, my knight out with targets. First of all, like he's gonna lose a pawn. Well, I guess not. He can play like knight c6, But then I can even just go here, hitting the pawn, something like this, something like rook d1, and as you can see, white is significantly better. Either way, that was not my idea. My idea after d6 was to play the move queen e4, which is the second best move. And this idea of queen e4 simply says, okay, I'm threatening checkmate, a reasonable idea. Obviously after takes, check here, mate, right? So he can't do that, and I thought that after g6, maybe the position is stable. I'm gonna long castle, that was my idea. I'm gonna long castle long, get the rook on the file, and I'm gonna have some very interesting ways of playing. But my opponent calculated for a while and saw this very interesting line, and I'm sure he saw this because I don't know why else he would have played it. He played this very interesting move. He played f5, simply saying, okay, well, now your queen is blocked, my bishop defends the pawn, and he had this very interesting idea after en passant, which is of course forced, because as all good chess players know, en passant is the best move in any position, if it is allowed to be played. My opponent blunders here. He blunders because after ef6, his idea, and this is all that happened in the game. This is kind of why this is an appetizer game, because this is kind of where the game ends. His idea here was queen e4, bishop e4, rook e8, knight d2, and he thought, actually knight d2 is wrong, I have to move f7 here, but I did not see that. Not gonna lie, I did not see that. Knight d2 is fine. Knight d2. Basically, obviously, I'm saying gf6 is a big mistake. Simply, you're getting your pawns out of the way. I'm able to castle. I'm able to do good. And what he missed after knight d2, he played the move bishop f5. Very reasonable. And the simple move that he missed is the move f3. And white is winning. He missed this from afar. He missed this from all the way back when he played f5. He missed this from this position. And yeah, sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. He was a bit of an old guy, so it kind of makes sense that he's a little less tactical. But I'm just up a pawn, and I don't remember his name, as you can see up there with the very nice name card. Kind of doesn't really have anything better than taking here, allowing me to castle long. And white is winning. White is winning. I'm winning because I'm simply going to win a pawn. I have attack on this with both pieces. After he defends it with rook e6, I decide, okay, I'm going to take on d6. And here I am simply up a pawn, and I have to win an endgame. We're not going to go too deep into this endgame. There's a lot of very interesting ways of how to win endgames. I have a video that goes deep into endgames on the channel already, if you'd like to see that. I believe it's called like converting a pawn, of like how to convert a pawn, something like that. It's a pretty good video. If you'd like to watch it, sure, do it, totally. I appreciate the watch time. Anyway, I'm up a pawn. I'm able to get my pieces to the center very quickly. Knight c6, and I don't really give him any chances. Knight f5, stopping this move. A rook trade doesn't actually work here. If he plays this, I have this move knight e7 check, which would win the knight, because after takes, I win the rook with check for free. Anyway, he goes king f7. I go f4, stopping the move knight to e5. Reasonable. King g6, g4. My opponent plays rook e8, and he simply blunders the fact that I'm going to win the game now with this move rook d7, threatening a checkmate on this square. Very nice move. If he plays this, it's simply a checkmate. There's no escape for the king. He's forced to actually lose a knight, because after rook c7, I'm attacking the knight, which is defending the forking square here, forking these two pieces, which would of course be winning. And in a couple moves, my opponent resigns. He plays h5. I take the knight. Rook c8. If he took this pawn, of course, I fork him, which would be bad. Rook e8. h3. Takes. Check. King up. Rook g1. I go knight e3, stopping all his plans, defending my pawn. And after rook h1, I play the move g5. The pawn can't take since it's pinned to the king. I'm about to win another pawn. So I will be up 5 points of material. He gives me this check. I go king c3, and my opponent resigns the game, which is the first game that I won in this tournament on round 2. Very nice game, but I do have one more for you, and this one is a lot better and more high quality than the last one. So we're going to get into it. Of course, I also do not remember the name of this person, so that is their name. They are around 1650 over the board, which is decent. That's like a respectable rating, but of course I'm going to try and beat them because if I lose to them, I would lose a decent amount of points. And I have the white pieces again. So we start off in round 3 of the tournament. I play the move d4. Very reasonable. It's a 5-round tournament, by the way. My opponent goes d5, and I decide to play bishop f4, which is the London opening, the only opening that I know. Of course, c4, Queen's Gambit. There's Catalan style. You can play it normally with knight f3, but I like this bishop f4. I like these London positions. I think they're very nice. Knight f6, e3. We get a lot of theory in. Pretty normal stuff here, and this is the first like real issue with the game. My opponent plays this move a6, which I already know is not a good move. It's really not a good move. You're not supposed to play a6 in the London. Sometimes you are, of course. Sometimes you're supposed to play a6 in many openings, but in this position in particular, it's not really a good idea simply because it doesn't do a whole lot, and it takes the eye off the ball. So I continue developing. Bishop d3, the best move. My opponent plays c4, another big mistake. Again, you're not really supposed to, this is another very common trope in the London, you're not supposed to advance your c-pawn, because your c-pawn is very important to pressure the center, and there are lines where white can play e4, and lines where white can play b3 to strike at your center, if of course your opponent has not already committed the pawn to a6 and play b5, you have b3. Just for example, b3. Let me put an actual real example on the board. Let's say my opponent goes bishop b7, bishop b3, here, castles, and I would have this move b3 here, which it should be a pretty reasonable move. And the idea is after b5, I'm going to play this move a4. Doesn't work here. My point still stands. I don't care. But that's kind of a main idea here. Also, it allows white to play the move e4, which is a common pawn break in London as well. Because if white were to play e4 before then you would be able to strike the center and really soften up white's position. My opponent goes c4. I go bishop c2. My opponent goes bishop d6. I don't think too hard here. I play bishop g3, which is what you're mainly supposed to do here. It's not the best move, but it's fine. My opponent decides to play the move h6. Okay, again, weird move, stopping like this for some reason. I don't really understand. Maybe the idea is g5, which also I don't really get. It's okay. It's a reasonable move, making left for the king, and I go wrong because, well, it's what I was taught. I play the move b3, and the reason why is for the reasons that I told you. I know that it's a common idea in the London. I realized that he made a mistake with the move c4, and I was like, okay, the way that you normally exploit that is the move b3, but I was wrong. The way that you're supposed to exploit the c4 push here is the move e4, which of course I told you is another idea of the London. I'm threatening to fork. I'm threatening to open up white's king, who's still stuck in the center. And after the move bishop g3 it takes, I can takes castles probably. White is simply better after something like e5, knight d7, and actually white just has a crazy good attack on the king with the rook open up, the bishop open up, the queen gonna come here after a move like even knight g1 is probably very good for white. Simply you're going to go here, you're going to go g4, g5 maybe, you're going to put the knight behind the queen, maybe you're going to go f4, right? It's crushing, that's my point. And I know that, and I really should have played d4, but it just slipped my mind and I wasn't thinking about it during the game. Instead, b3. My opponent goes b5, and I do what I'm normally supposed to do. I play the move a5, a4, which is kind of like what you're supposed to do to kind of exploit it. And after the move bishop e7, of course, which I was looking at, I thought it was the only move. There's also this move b4, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why you would like soften up your pawns in this way, but I guess like something like this is said to be good for black, but I don't know. This doesn't look good to me. I guess I can't take due to like queen a5. No. No, because I would win the bishop, right? Yeah, bishop b5 here first, and then after queen here, then queen a5, and then you're going to win the knight. But yeah, I guess that's interesting. But instead, my opponent plays bishop b7. Of course, very reasonable move. It's equal, not minus like 3. And my idea here was I would take on c4 and I would try to exploit the fact that the bishop was kind of misplaced with like rook b1. If he opened up the b file, and if he opened up this area, I would get the whole center with the move e4, which was my idea. It was a pretty good idea. But first, I thought that if I didn't trade the bishops, I missed something here. I missed like a ghost or something. I saw a ghost. Really, the best move here for me is bc4 with my idea. I completely missed. Well, I didn't miss anything. I just miscalculated, I guess. I didn't see the right move. I thought that if I didn't trade the bishops right now, I thought that after bc4, my opponent would have bishop g4, takes, and after like bc4, rook b1. I thought that there might be like some very interesting like targets on this on the c pawn. That the queen could come here, kind of hit everything, and some lines like after rook b8, like the queen comes here. I thought that this pawn is really hard to defend, and I don't know. I thought that the queen being on that other square would be better here. So after bishop b7, I traded bishops first, which is okay. It's okay, but it's not the correct answer. My opponent takes back with the queen, and then I play my idea of bc4. Again, not the best answer, but it's okay. Yeah, bc4. And I was like, okay, well, you open up the b file. My idea when he opens up the b file was to play the move rook b1, so I play rook b1. Very logical. My opponent goes rook b8. I thought I castled there. Castling is a very interesting move, but instead I actually go at his throat. I thought that I play this move on the next move, but no, I go at his throat immediately, and I play this very, very interesting move, e4, which I thought was very, very cool. The idea is after takes, you're weakening both your pawns, so I thought that maybe even something like bishop takes e4, losing the bishop, which is normally wrong, but I thought maybe my knight gets some serious play. Like here, I go queen c2, or, I mean, I thought queen c2, but actually, no, the pawn is defended, so I can castle, right? Yeah, I castle, and then I have this move knight c5 incoming with pressure on this bishop, and pressure on the rook behind it. Even though the knight defends currently, it can be a problem in the future. That was my main idea. My opponent decided not to deal with it, and instead played the move knight to d7. Very reasonable, getting out of the way of the fork that I'm threatening, and I castled. Good stuff. Getting my king out of the center. Fine. Totally okay. Totally okay with me. Not the end of the world. Opponent castles as well. And immediately the alarm bells start ringing, right? Because what happens right now, my opponent has very little defenders of the king. The only thing that could be considered a defender is maybe this knight, because the rook can move knight f8. But what I have this bishop pointing down, I have this knight ready to jump in, I have my queen ready to jump in, I have e5, and of course a locked center benefits the attacking side. If you didn't know that, it's a very little, it's a little tidbit about chess. Cool stuff. And yeah, I thought that I had a very strong attack going on, and I needed to figure out some way to get my pieces over there and start attacking him. So I thought of this very, very deep move, which, retrospect, wasn't the best choice, but I ended up thinking, I don't have a good square for my knight. Because I thought, after a move like knight h4, which I want to play, my knight isn't where it needs to be. I want to go queen here. I want to get my pieces in. I want to start attacking him. But a knight isn't where it needs to be on h4. Really, what it wants to get to is this g5 square. I can't get to it immediately, because if I'm going to play knight g5, like, for example, this, actually, that would be wrong. This knight g5, this sacrifice is kind of invalid. As you can see, it's -1 because black has some play. But like g6, not g6, sorry, f5 was the move, right? Yeah, f5 was the move. And after like en passant, you have knight f6 hitting the queen and stuff. So I can't really sack the knight right now, and I would like to in the future after my queen gets to h4. So I thought of a very interesting plan, and the idea was the knight's in the way. I don't want to spend these tempi and moving it back and forth. So I thought of this cool idea, which was this move, King H1. And I'll tell you the idea. Really, it's not a very good move. If I want to play a move like that, I should play H3. But I played King H1, and my idea from a distance was to go Knight G1, Knight H3, and then come at him like this. And then come at him like this. Not a bad, honestly, not a bad idea. And the engine gives it a little too much hate. It's minus 0.4 from the game review that I'm seeing right now, but it's minus 0.2 on the actual engine. So in all honesty, it's kind of fine. It's kind of a very interesting move, but in reality, it's a waste of time. And my opponent immediately tries to counteract me by attacking me on the queen side with this move, Bishop A8, which is a cool move. Trying to trade rooks and take the whole file. Trading rooks is probably not the answer here, because why would I give up the file? Computer says it's fine, but it's the computer. We do not care about the computer. Rook b8 would not be a good move. Rook b8 seems like a pretty big inaccuracy to me as a practical player. But I think for a while here, and I played this nice move. I played this move Queen c1, which I thought was very cool. Idea is simply I want to stop the move. I want to stop the move Queen a3. Maybe my bishop can like wrap around in some lines. And I thought that, okay, Knight G1, this idea is coming. Even like Knight G1, Knight DF3, and then I get my queen in as an idea. And I was like, okay, if anyone's better here, I thought it was white, simply because like I have this nice play on his king. My opponent decides to trade rooks. I correctly inferred that I have to take back with the bishop. And the idea is to make a battery and attack him from the other side of the board, which is what I have been debating on calling this video, but I do not know if I'm going to call it that yet. My opponent goes Rook b8. Very reasonable move. I go Queen c2. Now the battery is open. I'm threatening e takes d5, opening up Queen h7, which would promptly probably like win the game in some lines. Maybe like even I can take this pawn, I can bring my other pieces in, and I thought, okay, like white is doing really well. My opponent plays Queen a3 and blunders the game. The game is over. The game is over. But it's not over in a traditional sense. It's over like very tactically. It's kind of hard, in my opinion, to find the correct way to win. ED5. I thought here for a while is the best move. Obviously, I'm opening up my Queen h7 while also attacking his knight. Thought here for a while, and I thought that he could even recapture with the pawn here, which was a crazy line. I was like, is that even good for me? Is that even good for white? I thought ED5, Queen h7 here, Queen h8, Queen h8, King e7. I didn't think this was anything, because I thought the king gets out, the queen is attacked after like Queen g7. Even something like Queen takes c3, and I was like, is this obviously not Rook d1? Rook e1 is the move I'm trying to play. Is this even correct? Like his king gets away. I was just unsure about this. I really was unsure about this. So I didn't go for it. And I found something instead. The other line, of course, is to, after King f8, start with this move Rook e1, which I thought didn't work due to the move, what was it? It was, I believe, Knight f6. It was either Knight f6 or Knight e7. I think it was Knight f6, Queen here, Knight g8, Bishop h7, Knight e7, Rook takes Knight, King takes Knight, and I thought this position was like okay for black, and I'm right, but where did I go wrong? Here I simply have to move Knight e5. Okay. That's kind of funny. Yeah, but this was my calculation. I thought this was like okay, but I didn't see an immediate concrete win, so I didn't go for it. And I instead found something else that I thought made a lot of sense. And after the move ed5, my opponent played a different move. My opponent played the move Knight e7. Basically, I was just saying that I thought he could take on d5 and he'd be okay. My opponent played the move Knight e7. I thought here for a while. The move Queen h7 is winning again. But like after this, I thought, okay, knight g8, bishop h7 doesn't result in anything, knight f6, and I'm like, really, dude? This is really what I want? Okay, like I'm up material, but my queen side is like getting really weak here. And I just was unsure, like if I take this pawn, I'm opening up his bishop, and you can see where my hesitation lied. I was just kind of scared of giving him this much counterplay. Of course, the engine can handle it, but I wasn't sure if like I could handle it, you know. So instead of doing that, I was just like, you know what? Aren't I just like up 2 pawns here? Aren't they just like up 2 pawns? Like I take on e6, my opponent recaptures, and I simply take on c4, and I'm like, and I'm arguing, okay, I'm up 2 pawns. It's an endgame. Like, there's no way I can't win. The queen is under attack. The only move he has is queen b3. Otherwise, the queen is trapped. Queen b3. I could simply go for queen h7. Really, this is where I probably should have played the move. Because after king f7, I probably have like knight fe5, knight ce5 or something. And I'm doing really good here. Like, I'm mating him or somehow. For example, this is like a nice way to win the game. Knight g8 takes, king e7. Queen f7 here, and this is a checkmate, which is kind of fun. But really, I should have played queen h7 there, but I was just kind of wanting to win an endgame, so I simply played the move knight c5 first, arguing that, okay, you can trade queens with me, it's an endgame, I'm going to win in the end, and I do. Queen c2, bishop c2, my opponent takes the knight, I take the knight, I have a good knight in the center, my opponent decides to go rook c8, I go c4, this was the main idea. My opponent goes knight c6, I go knight c6. Training pieces still. Bishop c6 is a decent move. Maybe I should have played like a move like bishop d3, which probably works. Simply saying that, okay, this pawn can't be captured due to the move rook a1, winning the pawn behind it. But here maybe I'm giving him too much play with like a move like, I don't know, I thought rook b8, but I guess I have rook b1 there. Maybe, actually, I don't have rook b1 there. After rook b8, rook b1, he trades and wins the pawn on a5. So maybe he goes like something else, like king f8, maybe rook d8. Yeah, rook d8 actually just wins a pawn. Okay, that's kind of funny. But instead of doing that, I simply bring my rook to the b file. My opponent goes bishop e8, attacking my pawn. I go c5. I'm gonna kind of go quickly through this because it's an interesting endgame, but it's pretty standard and it's not the most crazy thing in the world. My opponent tries to make play, I stop him from making play. e5, I take on e5 because I didn't see the right move. Simply bishop f5 is completely winning. Don't know how I didn't see that. We don't care. Instead, I take on e5, takes king bishop e3. I know I'm winning. King h7, I go f4, defending my pawn. Rook c3 is a very interesting move. He's threatening this move bishop to b6, which would win my bishop, because if my rook moves, I would have a back rank checkmate. So I play the move king g1. I mean, like, very logical play. Bishop d6, rook b2, check here. And I mean, here he can probably resign because he doesn't have enough play. I'm simply up 2 pawns and I'm going to win in the future. We fast forward a couple of moves. I'm able to get some very nice play. I get the rooks off the board, and in this bishop endgame, it's just over. The king comes to the center. He's going to try and win this pawn that's on a dark square, but he can't really leave these pawns because they're just going to go forward. So I go g3. I go king here. I go king d4. Now maybe my king is going to come over and win this pawn. Also, the pawn is hanging. Bishop h3. We trade these pawns, and now I simply have 2 passers. So we go pretty quick. My opponent is Zugzwanged, and in the end, he loses the bishop, and I walk over to this pawn, and my opponent simply resigns the game. So those are the 2 games that I won in this tournament. I might make a separate video for the next 2 games, like 2 separate videos for the next 2 games, both of which I lost. So we're getting the losses out in the end. But either way, that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, do all the normal things YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.